Happy Easter, everyone! Well, and yes, I usually don't stream on Sundays, but since it is Easter, I was like, why not? Easter is, well, it used to be one of my favorite holidays when I was much younger, with all the candy you can eat. But as I'm getting older, it doesn't really have the same type of spirit anymore. Well, I mean, I don't mind Easter itself. It doesn't really have the same type of spirit. Same thing as same thing for when it comes to Christmas. You know, for Christmas itself is another type of holiday. It's when I was younger, much younger. I love Christmas and Easter, but now these days, it's not. It's not the same. Sure, I can get some Easter candy, but that's pretty much it of it. I know that many of my friends and viewers really enjoy Easter. And who would not have been playing or not who would not even like Easter? I mean with all the candy and all that, well, people don't eat too much. Otherwise you will get a stomach ache, which is no go. There's a no go. I know that some of my friends may not able to join in the stream today since like Game Guy is unfortunately it's not available to join in. It's because that he is spending time with his family, so unfortunately he won't be able to join in. But I really had to just sing Happy Easter, everyone. Oh man, that's just this stream won't be that long though. I have to say just perhaps just about an hour long or so because it just I felt it was time for at least another Easter stream. I did one last year of Easter stream, and yeah, Easter itself has always been one of my favorite holidays, but it doesn't have the same spirit anymore. I I mean I don't mind it. It just as you're getting older, you realize, oh, things like those big holidays like Christmas. You've always been taught that Santa Claus is real, but you realize in the end he's not real. It's just your parents who bought and hide those presents under the tree. And the Easter Bunny is not real because he isn't the one who hid the candy in the trees or bushes or anything like that. But when it comes to Easter, in my childhood, what did I do for Easter? But just to be honest though, I don't really remember much of my earlier childhood when it comes to uh, Easter. I did ask my mom earlier if she remembers if either me or my siblings ever um, did any egg hunts, like looking after eggs, like just small candy eggs. But we didn't do that. But but we did had kind of some sort of egg hunt when I was a teenager. My dad he made many different maps. This was only for indoors. My brother had found the second map, and was located inside the oven, even though the oven wasn't even turned on. But still, that was just one place that you should not even place a map or anything. But okay, but he did that for only. My dad only did this for only a short time, and now in my early 30s, I don't really do much for Easter at all. I mean, still I get some candy, but that's much it. I really don't wouldn't mind if you used to get a just a plastic bag or a bag with candy. I don't have to be literally given an egg filled with candy. Strangely enough, though, my dad, he yesterday when he tried to find some, um, my dad tried to find some empty Easter eggs that he can fill out with some candy, but he went to three different stores, but he find none. He didn't find any one of those. But he went to a fourth store. He managed to at least find. Uh, there were some candy that but all those eggs had already been filled with candy. So he bought three of those, emptied those, and put some mother candy in it. Yeah, and so I mean I don't mind eating candy for Easter, but in my case I won't be able to eat too much. Not because I'm getting a stomach ache or anything. It just especially too much candy in my case would be not too bad. Anything I would just get. I feel a bit how to say a bit sick, but mostly tired. It's like if you're being hyper the whole time and suddenly you're crashing down, or your sugar, your blood sugar is crashing. That is just like that is like for me. I feel like I'm really tired if I eat too much candy or eat too much too sweets. But that is the same thing if I eat too much um, cookies or anything that has that sugar in it. Even even if I like too much chocolate itself can also make me really tired. But I managed to find a way to at least lower that in well a way to how to say counter it by drinking water. So in a way, I managed to at least well lower my tiredness with that. So I know for a fact that many of my friends and family are probably well, most of my family enjoy candy, but some of my family members, like my dad, he can't eat much to chocolate. It's because of his he will have how to say it will trigger headaches. So yeah, and I know for a fact that many times that even I cannot eat too much chocolate myself. My dad has the problem that he can have too much chocolate will trigger a headache or even worse case a migraine. But in my case, I if I eat too much chocolate or even too much candy, even if it's for Easter or Christmas, I will just feel really tired. And that's normal, understandable. And well, I know for the fact that many people have, um, many countries have their own version of the not Easter traditions. I know the fact that in America, Americans they celebrate Easter with looking around in a park or even your backyard for hidden candy, chocolate eggs, like that. I had probably never done that, as far as I can remember, at least. Though I don't remember if I ever did. But each country in the world has its own tradition when it comes to Easter. Americans have many different versions. Like, I mean, I'm really interested to see how Americans celebrate Easter. And about that, not only that, not only that Easter is one of the few holidays of the year that is not on the same date every single year, like Christmas or anything. And next year will Easter will be around early April, I believe. And I know for a fact that many of my viewers may actually have quite of an experience of Easter. But there are some times of during Easter I wished could have been better. I mean, not like if I didn't like something bad happening. It just, you know, if it is like, if, I mean, what if like you waking up one, like you're knowing Easter is just only a couple of days away and has been nice weather. There's no snow in sight, and the trees are starting blowing, the flowers are popping up, and just about maybe the night before Easter, and you're looking and you wake up and you look at the window. Wait, did it snow last night? That would have been a quite a shock if you literally wakes up when if during the whole week that the Easter and the whole week before then had been uh, just really sunny, warm, nice. The trees are about to start to pop. The leaves of the trees are starting to blooming out. The flowers are popping up, and just the night before Christmas, so the night before, um, the night before Easter, and you suddenly realize it had snowed, and it just would have been quite hilarious, and especially if your parents had spent the evening with hiding the eggs in your backyard, and it suddenly had snowed, and makes it a bit more difficult to find uh, the eggs. But at least when I celebrate Easter egg hunt with my family, well, kinda in a way. I mean, my dad made maps, like just not only one map, but multiple ones. I remember at least what my mom told me that my brother he found his second map hidden inside the oven. Yeah, you heard me right. His second map had been placed in the oven, and the oven wasn't even turned on though, so that's a good thing. But I mean, that was just crazy. But Easter itself, I really don't have the same spirit as when it involves the Easter. I mean, I love it, I like it, but it doesn't feel the same anymore as you're getting older. Same thing for Christmas and other holidays. You probably had the game guys that I got pretty much the whole family over. This Easter egg hunt is chaos, but I wouldn't want it all any other way. Everyone says hi, by the way. Well, this year it was just my family actually had, or at least my dad actually had invited my brother and his girlfriend over for dinner for this Easter. So it was just me, my brother, his girlfriend, and my parents. My sister wasn't invited. Um just saying it's a long story. It's just it's not even a good story. Let's say it's quite of a family drama that my family has been going through right now. It's just it's not a good thing either. I can say right now, one thing is what has happened is that my I don't know if, but my mom had cut ties with my sister. She doesn't talk to her anymore. And I don't know if my dad has the same thing or if my brother has, but let's say it is quite of a family drama I really don't want to get too much into. It's just that bad it is. Anyways, I know for that many have been wondering those on the next stories that's gonna be made on my channel lately. Um, Unfortunately, I can't give you any precise story that's gonna be made since I have been for the past week or so, been mostly been worked on um, Robert Freeman's story that he asked me to do. Um, that was a couple of weeks ago. I made that one, and I even made Game Guy's birthday story. So that but it won't be uploaded until tomorrow on April 1st. So April 1st is going to be another love story. And it's going to be quite a little bit long one as well. They're about 36 minutes long. And I won't be giving much into exactly which characters it is involved. That you have to wait to see. And I know that some of my other viewers have may wondered, since some of them may wonder, like, do you, how do you choose your stories? Well, I actually don't just simply choose any particular story at a time. When I'm making my love stories, I just random pick one that I just wanted to do. I mean, even if I had been asked stories to do, sure, I can only just pick one of them at a time. I mean, I can only do one story at a time. It is, uh, you know, having one story is one in mind, but having multiple ones in the mind, yeah, that's just one rule I don't want to cross. Or to, I mean, I just don't want to make multiple stories at the same time. So I don't. Reason is that I don't want to make them uh, crossing each other. But there are some of the crossover stories that I still had in mind that I might be able to do soon enough. Of course, there are in fact many um, crossover stories still remained to be doing. Several MLP Sonic characters, which I haven't really been able to focus on, and but there is one story that I will try to make it soon enough, which is the Malachite's last story for his birthday, which is sometimes in mid-April, so I have a little bit of time to focus on that one. So even if the people ask me doing a love story for them or even true friend, if anyone had, well, if anyone asked me to do a story for them and if they had any suggestions, or at least like if they had requests of what they want to have happen in the story, I'm open for that. I'm open to put any request of the story, and also if they had any ideas they want to have what's going to happen in the story, I'm all ears. I'm open for any ideas for the story that they want to happen. Let's say like if they had chosen two characters, and if they already decided how many kids they want to have in the story, will try to do that. And but people should know that some of the shippings that there are in fact exist may not even have any kids that is made for those particular shippings. And that's something understandable. Some of the common stories that I have been asked is like doing a last story of I mean, I have been asked to do some cross stories based on uh, some anime and like that, but unfortunately, I won't be able to do that. It's mostly because that it's mostly based on the anime that I had never even seen or perhaps even heard of. It's not like I ignore that. It just there are still so many shippings and franchise of fandoms out there in the world, including when it comes to anime. In fact, there are so many animes that I hadn't even watched. Like I hadn't even seen One Piece, and it's just not like if anyone had asked me to do a love story of the series, the show One Piece, I'm afraid I won't be able to do that since I hadn't even watched the show. And will I do it? I mean, unlikely. As there's other anime series that I have heard of, Attack on Titans. Now that is one anime that is never in my life is gonna see. Attack on Titans is a one anime I never want to watch. I've seen clips of it on YouTube, but yeah, it is not one of my an anime I just prefer not to watch. There are still many there are still so many shows out there I might even to see, but there are many that I haven't really focused on much. My Hero Academia, for example. Now, that is an anime I did watch, only for only a couple of episodes. But my honest opinion about My Hero Academia, it wasn't really much in my it wasn't my one of my favorites. I only saw a handful of episodes, but that's it. I stopped after like 7 episodes, but it wasn't really. It didn't make sense. I mean, first of all, how now in a in the world suddenly people were getting these strange powers, like quirks or whatever it's called. Yeah, it is. How did they say? It was really strange. It's just, it was really odd on that. And yeah, then, but when it comes to like other shows, like MLP G1 to G3, I I don't think I ever watched G1 and G2 of MLP series. The only one I did see was around G3 version. And honestly though, even some of the characters do share the similar names, not that maybe not the same appearance or anything, but the G3 of MLP is not as much as original as a new one or as G4. The G4 is very much, well, it was way better. I mean, a lot of fans loved G4. My Pony G4 was one of the best shows out there from in this part of this new decade. I'm a bit surprised of when they decide to end G4 and knowing that was another show that followed afterwards or was running at the same time, Pony Life. MLP Pony Life was, as some people called, MLP G4.5 or 4.5. I never saw Pony Life, and I'm not even going to watch Pony Life. Based on what I saw from the different clips on YouTube of Pony Life, it's just the Pony Life itself is well, let's say it doesn't share the same. The characters from G5, G4, the Pony Life, or 4.5, it is also known as, it's pretty bad. The landscape is not even remotely close as than from back in G4 it is. And even when Discord appeared in the series, it was not even John Delancey who made the voice for Discord in Pony Life. It was actually the same voice actor for Macintosh. And yeah, as many some of my friends like Game Guy, he didn't even like Pony Life, and I had to agree on that. And in fact, Pony Life itself was a little bit pretty bad, even though I never watched it, and it was supposed to be on YouTube as a show. I never watched it, only saw clips of it. Oh, I got it. Happy Easter. Uh, yeah, so, well, Easter has MLP G 4.5 or 4.5 of Pony Life. Some fans like it, but pretty much I really don't. I mean, if you look at Ponyville from the original G4 and in Pony Life, you will see a huge difference. Like the landscape are really not identical. It's like they're like there is no way to sing it. And having the MLP characters being made as chibi version, okay, that was pretty unique. It was quite something I didn't expect. But G4 was it was one of the best shows that ever within the MLP franchise. I never saw G1 or G2. I only saw some of the G3. But there are some Brony fans that pretty much even didn't like G3 either. Even like Minty Christmas. And knowing that some of the characters from G3 did made an appearance in G4, like Terek, even though Terek in G3 wasn't an actual bad guy originally, he was a human prince that was transformed into that. And the Smoosh, who appeared in the Grand Gapping Gala. In G3, he was a bad guy. He wasn't green. He was purple in color. And Grugar also appeared in G4, G3, and G4, but even though there was Discord, I was really a bit surprised that they actually made up that. Knowing how many things of the G4 that's well, the G4 itself inspired so many artists, fan fan art that was so much. In fact, back in early 2020, just before G5 was even released, I heard this story is a kind of a news that Hasbro had hired a fan artist based on from G4 to help to work on the to help to work with the G5. I was really surprised because why would they hire a fan artist otherwise? Since they have a person that can just simply hire professional artists. I mean, if they had already people that worked on the G4 earlier, but why not hire some people that only had hired professional artists otherwise? Considering how many back in from all the G4 seasons, they had hired professional artists for that. And I don't know if it's true that Hasbro did hire this fan artist for G5. And and like I said before about this, many fans when they find out that G4 was going to end by sometimes in 2019, it was just devastating shock. I mean, the show has been around for almost 10 years, for almost an entire decade. And then suddenly Hasbro made an announcement that G4 is going to end and it's going to focus on a new generation. And even though that they kind of did season 10 of G4 as a comic book series, I was quite a big surprise of that part. Though, newsflash, when they made that, they made Twilight as queen, not a princess. I don't even know if that was an error or if that actually meant supposed to be a queen or not. I wouldn't know. Even though Celestia originally was thought of to making a queen, but it was changed eventually though to back to as only princess. But if you look at it, in the series there has only been only a few characters that had the title queen, like Queen Novo, Chrysalis is one of the few that actually has a title queen, not princess. And Even Grogar, he declared himself Emperor of Equestria at one point. And yeah, I mean, and even back when the G5 was announced was going to take in place, there were a lot of concept art that was leaked, supposed to be leaked, of showing the new designs of the main six, which almost every single character have ever been of the main six did get some new design, at least new looks on them. But only a few of them did not. Had a they were only there were like the only three of them was changed. Pinky was a unicorn. No, she would be a Pegasus. Fluttershy would have been a unicorn. Twilight would have been an Earth pony, while Applejack, Rarity, and Rainbow would have remained as they were. And the were thought of maybe there was gonna be like a movie of the new designs of the main six, where Twilight, as an Earth pony, was working somehow to make mechanical wings in order to be able to fly. I was like, what? Seriously? But I don't know of I don't know if those concept art was real or if there was just some fan art. Who knows? But then when they also that Hasbro made another announcement, there's gonna be some new characters in the G5. I mean, itself was not that too bad. I mean, they introduced new characters all the time, like when they introduced Cheese Sandwich, Discord, um, even when they introduced Scootaloo's parents for the first time, Applejack's parents, even though for only for one episode. And but then later it revealed that it wasn't that the whole cast was going to be new characters. And even Tara Strong, the voice actor for Twilight, for example, she was not even supposed to be in. She actually had announced just shortly after G4 had ended that she wanted to be going back as the voice for Twilight. But she did. She did reappear as Twilight in G5 as this magical hologram. I was a bit surprised about that at least, but even though that was only for a few lines. But even so, even when G5 was announced, there was a lot of mixed feelings in the community, which complete understanding. I mean, if any of the fans has been within the the Brony fandom, there have been tons of fans who had adored the G4 for nearly 10 years. Suddenly, Hasbro announcing they're gonna end the series. And yeah, and even when Hasbro did reveal the new designs of the new main five, well, the new main six with Sunny and her friends, I was quite a bit shocked, but also at the same time, I was curious. I was both hesitating and very much excited. But after the first movie, MLP A New Generation, there was so many positive response of the movie. And even though that the Make You Mark series came around, I was really happy. But instead of seasons, there were chapters. Now that was one thing I never expected though. But one thing that really surprised me. After the sixth chapter was finished, that was going to be the final chapter or the final season, or at least the final chapter of the entire Make You Mark series. And the series didn't even last more than a year well, maybe for almost 2 years. MLP Make You Mark lasted for about 2 years or so, and it was over. Friendship is Magic lasted for nearly 10 years. I was expecting at least that Make You Mark should have been could have lasted for a bit longer, considering how many fans love Make You Mark with Sunny Her New Friends. It was so many positive facts of that. But I still just don't understand why. So they decided just to end and Make You Mark, but letting that the G5, I was like, okay, chapter 6 is going to be the last season or the last chapter of Make You Mark series of the G5. Was like, are they preparing for G6 already? But it wasn't even that. There were no MLP G6 in mind. It was only that they were only planning for continue the series, but not Make You Mark, but Tell Your Tale. But those episodes are only 5 minutes, so maybe just 5 minutes and a few seconds long. Okay, okay. But then they announced it's gonna be 4 special episodes. Each one is gonna be 22 minutes long. First one is gonna be released in March. So the first Telltale of MLOPG 5 was gonna be released in this month. But newsflash, everyone, March is basically over. And the first special release has not even been released yet. And I actually even went back yesterday to look at it, to just to read if has been any update about that. But it hasn't even been any single update. Like they hadn't even made any official title on that one. They never even posted when it's gonna be released. So it's possible that might not even be released in March this month. As Cody said, sometime in April, more likely. Because the second one is gonna set so the second one is set to be released in August. And the third in October. And the fourth Envelope PG5 special of Tell Your Tale is supposed to be released in November. Since the first one is supposed to be released sometime in this month, but it hasn't so far not been any further update about it. Like no official release date, no official title, nothing. Only they announced about a month ago that's gonna be 4 special episodes of Tell Your Tale G5. But there was no like any official like no titles, no release date, only for approximately around which month it's going to be being released. And especially the first one is going to be released this month. I had assumed it's going to be an Easter special. But since Easter is just right now, it's right now. And another thing is, March is basically over. And has it been released? Not at all. So it's very likely it will be released in April. But here's another thing is that the G5 Telltale series that's on YouTube hadn't even posted any other further new updates, like new episodes has been released. Last one was released sometimes early, only about I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and there hasn't even been any episodes released since. So I wonder, when is the next Tell Your Tale of G5 is going to be released on YouTube? Who has any idea? There are no information online, so I only speculating maybe by sometimes next month or so. But it's one of those weird still. Ever since when G5 was announced was going to be released, it was just so many expectation about the show. Like Make You Mark with so many excitements. There were very high hopes that Make You Mark would last for a few years. But Diddle, no, at all. It only lasted for nearly just 2 years. Friendship is Magic lasted for nearly 10 years. I really had hoped that this entire Make You Mark couldn't have lasted at least a few years. In fact, the last the last special that was part of Make You Mark was originally supposed to be in chapter 7, but it was eventually changed early in the production. I was not aware of that at first though. But and having some of the characters in this entire series, like back in the first movie, A New Generation, when we saw Misty for the first time, I was quite surprised. An alicorn, and then having a unicorn as a servant, I thought, is it possible that the unicorns have their own ruler? It's impossible to tell it at that moment. In fact, Opaline was known as Shadow Pony, or Shadowy Pony, or Shadow Alicorn, but it wasn't until later her name was revealed to be Opaline, and later to be Opaline Arcana. And I was really surprised of any of this, the development. They announced that Twilight is gonna and her friends is gonna just not make appearance in the series. I just and even though back in the Make You Mark, there were only one shippings, well, tons of shippings, but one particular stood out. Some people actually made a fan made shippings between Queen Haven and Alphabettle. And how did they not even not notice that? Because in the end, they end up dating and still are dating in the series. And that, in fact, is the only known official shipping in the series. I think it's quite of amazing of how they made that. So if Haven marries Alphabettle, that makes Misty would be her stepdaughter. But unfortunately, we may not know if that's going to happen or not. Exactly, Cody. What happened to Pip and Sip's father, the king? Well, that's unfortunately we don't have no single answer on. Like there's like how many how many percentage of info is there available on Pip and Sip's dad? That it would be zero. Same thing with Misty's mother. There's no mentioning that. As Robert Freeman thought, maybe what if what if Flurry Heart could have been the mother of Misty? Well, it's possible at least because she is immortal. So it's possible that she could have been that. But at the same time, is it possible that she could have been the mother of Misty? Well, first, um, because if you will go back in a new generation movie, just looking at when the main five made their first interactions with unicorns in Brotherhood, there were a few words that they thought would be like forbidden words, like feather, magic, and mayonnaise. Yeah, mayonnaise or mayo was a bit strange. How that itself was a bit like a taboo word in it, but among the unicorns. I have no idea why that particular word was just. But we had no idea who that happened, or But even if Fairyheart was the mother of Misty, it's likely if she would have been, she likely would have been living quite outside of Bridalwood so that it would even draw attention to her. Because if the Rider Unicorn saw her having wings, yeah, it is more than likely that they would have been terrified. After generations of being telling stories of how unicorns, how Pegasus and Earth ponies are, so it would have been understandable that Flurry Heart may not have even been able to go inside unless that she was wearing some form of cloak or if she tied a rope around her body to tie her wings to her body so that they would have even noticed. I mean, even if they were so, she wouldn't even have been able to use her wings because she couldn't fly because no pony could at the time though. And it's just many of those ideas are like people like someone like what if she what if um what if Flurry Heart actually was living still lives among the unicorns publicly, complete open, without hiding her wings. Some may like, what if she took it so drastic enough that she had her wings surgically removed, like having those wings cut off her body and have it surgically prov- provide so that they were not leaving any scars of showing that she had wings at one point. If anyone had suggested that idea, I would have said, no, that is way too far for anyone to even. I don't think Flirty Heart would even go so far to cut off her own wings by immediately to remove her wings in order to live among the ponies in as like a unicorn. I don't think that she would even go that far. And having a spell to have those wings removed magically, that might possible could have happened. Only if the magic was still around. Because when the magic was gone, she wasn't unable to perform a spell. So personally, I don't think Fairyheart is the mother of Misty or even Sunny for a fact. Of Sunny's family, the only one we know of her family is Argyle, Starshine, her father. What about her mother? Well, we don't know anything. In fact, we only saw her dad, in the first movie in a few scenes and even made appearance in Make You Mark, I think in chapter 5 or chapter 6 that he made appearance in. And and of course in one episode of Tell Your Tale series. But Sunny's mother has never made even been referenced. She never mentioned or even seen a photographs. So I may wonder what happened to her mother. So it's impossible to tell. But some may would have suggest, what if that Sunny's mother is actually a unicorn the whole time? I mean, it's not a far-fetched idea because it's Argyle, her father. He believed in those ancient stories that ponykind used to be friends. So if he strongly believed that unicorns and earth ponies were once friends, so the whole idea of her having a unicorn mother, it might not even be so as far fetched. But it had to be also considering from one point. We don't even know if the other among the unicorns or even the Pegasus Society, if there were any ponies there who strongly believed in those stories that they were once at one point in the history friends. It's, I mean, there were like may not even be any other ponies out there in Brotherwood or except for Heights that believed in friends, in the friendship between the ponykinds. But Assuming at least from one point of view, if since Argyle himself believed in those stories, and he taught his daughter Sunny those stories to be real, and she shared her father's dreams and hopes. So, assuming in fact, what if there was a unicorn in Brotherhood that shared the same beliefs that the three point kinds used to be friends? What if there were a unicorn mayor who believed in those stories but to be true? And at some point she may have encountered Argyle and they fell in love after they realized these shared the same belief. But there were only one slight, and then they find out that she is pregnant. But there was only one problem though. The only problem is if that it were happened that Argyle did start having a child with a mare unicorn before the magic returned, there would have been only one problem. Because Argyle couldn't live in Brotherwood. If you remember when the main five entered in Brotherwood in the tea shop, or the or at the crystal tea shop, how did they react? Not in a positive way. There were so many negative things happened. So if Argyle and Sunny's mother, if she was a unicorn, he would have been able to live in Brotherwood, and vice versa for her, because she wouldn't even be able to live in Mirtan Bay at all. Because since he lived in the lighthouse, even though the lighthouse was just on the outskirts of Mirtan Bay, it would have been impossible for her to live in the lighthouse. Even if she would have been living in the lighthouse, she wouldn't even be. She had to been if she was a unicorn, and if she lived in the lighthouse, she wouldn't be able to leave the house during the daytime. She may only be allowed to leave the house at night when it's dark, when most of the opponents are asleep. Because how did I think boys as possible? Well, just remember how the opponents in Mirtan Bay reacted when Issy showed up. They were panicked. It was complete chaos. So it makes sense. So if they suddenly saw a unicorn coming out from the lighthouse during the daytime, oh boy, that would have been causing serious problem. I, I mean, Argyle himself may have been forced to either they may have forced her to leave, or even Argyle himself had to be given only two options. Either he make her leave, or he himself, along with Sunny's mother, to leave. So even if Sunny's mother would lived in the lighthouse, she may have to been she could move around freely and maybe had to hide every time if other Earth planets showed up. Because if Sunny's mother was a unicorn, she may have to hide herself every single time when an Earth planet showed up at the lighthouse. Because they would even have reacted any positive than that. Because when Sunny or when Issy showed up, it caused a massive panic. And in that perspective, if Sunny's mother was a unicorn and lived in the lighthouse, she would have been unable to just even walk around in town. And the only time that she may only be able to have a walk around is probably only in the lighthouse. And if she wanted to take a walk outside, it might have been during a night when it's dark and when the most opponents are asleep. In that perspective, it may does make sense. But I don't think she would have been happy about it, only being able to leave the lighthouse in the night at the during the night times. Cody, game guy wish you happy Easter from. So, personally, I don't believe that even if Sunny's mother was a unicorn, I don't think she would be quite happy to just be able to just only leave the lighthouse in the dark at the middle of the night, just for get some fresh air or even something. And he said the same thing to you, Code, Game Guy. Happy Easter. But here's another thing. If Sunny's mother was a unicorn, and if she was getting, and what about this? If Argyle had no clue in how to do to help a mare in childbirth, so if she wouldn't been, if Argyle had no idea how to help a mare to giving birth to a baby, it would have been very difficult to go in town, find a nurse, and bringing her back to the lighthouse because that particular nurse would immediately recognize that Pony was a unicorn and that the Earth Pony nurse would panic and leave and inform the others. And that would also cause a problem. And even if so, even if Sonny's father Argyle did knew how to handle childbirth, just imagine this. When she goes into labor, she will scream because without any medicine to at least to ease the pain, that yelling might be so loud enough, and ponies in town probably were feeling something is wrong, and they will send ponies up to the lighthouse to see what was wrong. And they will panic if they're seeing this unicorn giving birth in the lighthouse. And how would he try to make some explanation to that? Unless unless that she is giving birth in the basement of the lighthouse. If the basement is a bit low below the ground and they close the door, maybe that could somehow at least um, lower the volume. But at the same time, it's hard to tell. But even if Sunny's mother was an Earth pony, why wasn't she around when in the movie? Because when she made her first appearance as a child, I think I had to admit I don't think she was even like 10 years old or anything. I had to guess that she must have been around like 5 or 8 or something like that. Based on that, and based on her father later in the movie when he was still alive, since there was no mentioning of her mother, no photos, nothing. The only explanation why her mother wasn't even there is that she was no longer alive. In that sense, it makes complete sense. Or that simply that her mother could not walk, had left them. Other, maybe that her mother passed away in childbirth, or she was in, or she could have just simply left them. Because we don't even know if Olga was even married in the first place. What if that Sunny's mother and her father Olga was never married? And they had a baby and they tried and it didn't work out and she left. But here's the thing, another thing about this. We know of three places. We know that the Earth Merton Bay is only Earth ponies. Well, in the first though, and Sapphire High is only for Pegasus and Brillerwood are for unicorns. But what about the other places? Like Ponyville, Trottingham, Maidhaddon? What about those places? We know at least one place, Canterlot, was completely abandoned of ponies. So, what about Ponyville, Manhattan, Trottingham, and other places that they had ponies? What about that? Where did the society completely divided in places? Well, because in the originally concept of the first, before the movie was even made, there was supposed to be setting place in Ponyville. In that Ponyville itself was divided by high walls, and that each part of the town has been split into three, and that each part was having a high stone wall to prevent Earth ponies to walk over to Unicorn section. That was how it originally was meant as an idea, but entirely was eventually scrapped. And the story also that they were taking place in Ponyville was also eventually scrapped. They decided why not to make three new places. And since they had decided when G5 was going to be making, they decided to remain in Equestria because there are still many places that hasn't even been explored. Since they have been running in the same place for nearly 10 years as a show. And in that perspective, it makes sense. But eventually, but what about those other places? In the other big cities out there, like Ponyville, Trondheim, or Manhattan, what about those? Were they complete abandoned as well? Or were they divided? We don't even know. Because I know for a fact that Philadelphia, it had its own neighborhood where dragons lived among ponies. But that only appeared in the comics. So I don't know if that was canon or not. I wouldn't know. But assuming if the dragons like that lived in open, so if the major cities still had Pegasus, Unicorn, and Earth Pony still living, is it possible those major cities could have been split in, like, there were some lines in the ground to prevent unicorns across? Possible. But what about the other cities like Cloudsdale? Well, I would have to say this. My opinion about before the magic returned, Cloudsdale would have been more likely would have been completely abandoned. I mean, even if the Pegasus that still lived in Cloudsdale, I don't believe that they would have been able to do anything else. I mean, first of all, we don't even know they were still able to walk on the clouds without the magic was still around. But saying at least if they were. But if they lived in Cloudsdale, it would have been quite dangerous. Because if you fell off the edge, you wouldn't even simply just fly up again. Because without the magic, you couldn't fly. And falling down from Cloudsdale, it would have been a death sentence. You wouldn't even survive from that. I mean, frankly, we don't even know exactly how far up in the air that city was even located. But just saying that it's possible if you fell off that, if you had able to survive, you will be lucky one. But I just say Cloudsdale itself was more likely to be abandoned because I don't think that we're even risky to be living among the clouds. First, we don't even know if they could still walk on clouds without the magic, and even if they could, I really don't believe that they live there because falling off the edge probably would not be good for you. But there's still a lot of question marks about that. Some may even wonder if Cloudsdale, at the time before the magic even returned, if the whole city was even intact. It's because what if the magic when it was gone, the whole city, Cloudsdale, had fall apart. Like the clouds split up, it broke apart of itself, and since the whole Cloudsdale is basically made of clouds, even the houses are made of clouds. So if the magic was gone, We wouldn't know not to say if that particular city was broken apart in pieces, because we don't even know for sure if the magic was the one that kept the cloud and the buildings there intact, and if the magic was gone, and without the magic, who would not have been saying that Cloudsdale would have remained as one single piece? It's hard to tell if that the whole city will be fall apart. It, in a sense, it could be possible, but I can't guarantee that's true or not. Because based on this one thing, Cantlot is the only city that we know what has happened. But the others, status is unknown. And is it possible that we might even see Ponyville, Manhattan, Trottingham? In my opinion, unlikely. Because I since the G5 was going to be focused on some new locations. Not the ones that places that we are familiar with, like Ponyville, Canterlot, and others. But even though Canterlot only appeared in the first comic series based on G5, which is canon, by the way. So there is also the considering is that there are still about question marks about those places. And I can mention one thing: the main five, or now the main six, they actually traveled from Maritime Bay all the way to Fluttershy's cottage, and her cottage was basically much intact. And there was one thing they found. It was a crystal, a big crystal, and it actually even had somehow a recorded message on it by Fluttershy. I actually read those comics, and you can actually read those online. I was surprised of that in the first place, and that the cottage was still much intact, even though there was no one lived there anymore. But there were some rabbits living there, so I don't know if those are direct descendants of Angel, but who knows? But of the G5 timeline of this entire series, it's so many things that we don't know about what happened. Like exactly when the main six, or the first main six, when they passed away. And since at one point, one person from the was working with G4 did stated that Twilight won't outlive her friends. But that person who said that was no longer part of the show or into the production of it. She had left the production at one point after when she made the statement. So that statement itself may not even be relevant anymore, not even be canon. It's possible that Twilight might have outlived her friends. And though we don't even know exactly the average lifespan of the ponies are, they might live for 100 years at most, or maybe 110, but then we don't even know exactly how long Twilight lived. Some may think that, oh, she's still alive, she's immortal, but she was turned into Alicorn. And when they are turned into Alicorn, we don't even know if they're automatically turned as immortal as well. That's another thing about it. Since we know for a fact that Opaline made the statement, she is immortal. So, would that be the same thing for Celestia and Luna? I had to say yes, because she, they were from the same place as Opaline from Skyros. They were born there, born in Alicorn. So that makes sense. They are in fact immortal. I mean, if they weren't immortal, would they just simply just have a quite long lifespan more than 1,000 years, maybe 1,500, or maybe it's 2,000 years. I think that's possible also, but more likely to be immortal. So, what about when they are turning an alicorn? Well, we don't know. And as both Celestia and Luna said in the season 6 premiere, that there are no records. Like, there has never been observing of an alicorn born in Equestria before. And it makes sense though. I mean, back then it was probably a lot of confusion. But now that the statement of Opaline, it makes perfect sense. Because since both Luna and Celestia weren't born in Equestria, they arrived shortly after the Foundation. And they were in fact from Skyros, the land of alicorns. And even back in during the G4, the official book Journal of Two Royal Sisters made confirmed statement that they were born alicorns, and it makes perfect sense. If they were born in Skyros as alicorns and moved into a land that has never had any alicorns born, so it's possible. And considering it from many perspectives, it's possible that simply is that. And so here's another but non some people may think, okay, what about Twilight? If she had a child, would that child also be immortal? The Alicorn, natural born Alicorn? Well, it's possible. I mean, considering that Shining Armor and Cadence had very hard. And Cadence is a turn Alicorn. Shining Armor is a unicorn. And since Twilight was turned Alicorn, and if she found a husband or boyfriend or fiance who is a might either be a unicorn or even an earth pony or even a Pegasus. Is it possible that they can have an alicorn child? More likely, it is possible. But here's another thing. What if they actually had a son? Would he turn an alicorn? I mean, it's not saying it's impossible, even though there is only one confirmed male alicorn. Well, confirmed, but non-canon character. His name is Leon, and he only appeared in a French comic, and he was a younger cousin of Celestia and Luna. But he is not canonical character at all. So, but here's one other thing about their royal family. We know that Celestia and Luna are the only ones in the family except for Blue Blood. Their parents has never been mentioned or anything like that. But since Blue Blood is the 30, or in fact is 30 times great nephew to Luna and Celestia. So, if he is the great nephew, since nephew is when you have either a sister or a brother. So, is that it possible that Celestia and Luna had a brother or a sister in the past? But if they had a sibling that was and eventually had a child and that had and later become the direct ancestor to Blue Blood. So, is it possible that Celestia and Luna had a sibling? And why hasn't that particular sibling ever been mentioned? And in fact, if it did in fact exist, is the sibling in Alicorn? That's another question. Because who knows? I mean, it's impossible to tell if if Celestia and Luna, if they had a sibling. I mean, if Blue Blood is their 30 times great nephew, and since a nephew is either way someone who has a brother or a sister, but since they never actually mention another sibling, is it possible that the Blue Blood could actually not only be maybe that he isn't actually a nephew, What if that he could have been there? Maybe, maybe could have been under Celestia or Luna's, um, not nephew, but actually could have been one of their descendants. Let us do from this. What if that Celestia or Luna, at one point in the past, far distant past, actually had a child with a stallion, and that child never was born as an unicorn, and that child eventually grew up, have a child of its own, and it continued, and all the line, all the way down to Blue Blood. So what if that Blue Blood is not even an actual nephew, but it actually is their one of the sisters' direct descendant? But it might have been far-fetched idea because even though they only mentioned that Blue Blood is the nephew, they never said how many times he is the great nephew. I mean, Celestia Iluna, if he is supposed to be there, if he's their nephew, like 32 times great nephew, it's like great, 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 but 32 times great nephew. There has been a saying that it only makes sense because if he's a nephew, there must have been at least one sister or a brother in the distant past. So, if that's true, that sister or brother may not even have been an alicorn at all. But another possibility is that that particular sibling may not have perhaps been a blood related sibling. It could perhaps been an adopted sibling. I mean, consider for one thing, if the sibling would have been an alicorn, it's a very strong indication that even blue blood could have been alicorn also. But I know this may have been a little bit quite a far fetched a part of a theory, but if assuming that Celestia Eluna's parents adopted an, an orphan child, would eventually got married, have a child, and it continued all the way down to Blue Blood, should be the great 32 times great nephew. It makes sense if they had adopted a child and that child wasn't even alicorn, and that couldn't make sense that Blue Blood was never an alicorn. But unfortunately, we never had any concrete evidence or proof that Celestia Luna had a sibling because they never mentioned a brother or a sister or even parents. But how would you go and explain? How would you explain otherwise? If Blue Blood has officially in the series been mentioned as the nephew of Celestia Luna, so how are you going to explain it? That if he is the nephew of the royal sisters, but they never mentioned a sibling? That is a good question. But assuming if that his parents or that Celestia Luna's parents adopted a child, if they want to have another child and maybe their mother couldn't even have any other child anymore and they adopted a child. But another thing is, back in EG5, we know for a fact that Celestia Eluna arrived to Equestria. But we don't even know if their parents went along with them. Because before they became the rulers themselves, the kingdom of Equestria was actually ruled, well, is temporarily, and as far as I know, it is under the government of the ruling of Princess Platinum's father. And Princess Platinum is one of Equestria's 6 founders. But at the same time, it's just far fetched. And we don't even know if Celestia Luna actually had any siblings. They never mentioned that in the series at all. And not even in the official Journal of Two Royal Sisters, were no mention of any sisters or brothers. So, or their parents for the fact. So, how they explain it? I don't even have any answer on that. So, if they had a brother or a sister in the distant past, is it possible that it could have been an alicorn or simply just been another unicorn? But without any actual further information about the family tree, or if there are any their actual childhood, if there are no mention of the parents had another a third child, or if they adopted the child, it's there are still so many question marks about that. I mean, at least Hasbro could have made a little bit more explanation when it comes to the character Blue Blood. But did they? Oh, nope. They didn't. That, my friends, is a big disaster. Because if Hasbro had made any sort of explanation, a lot of things could have made much easier to figure out that. But uh, I mean, even one small thing about Blue Blood. Ever since he made his first appearance in season one at the Grand Gambling Gala, let's say a lot of fans they didn't even like him. Even Rarity herself was so in love with him, hoping to one day to marry him and so that she will be part of the royal family, but she realized how much a jerk he is. He only thought about himself. And I mean, if Blue Blood is part of the royal family, and look at Celestia, she was really honest. She was kind, generous. But Blue Blood, he was completely opposite. He was a jerk. He was just thinking he was selfish. And even though he made a second appearance in Equestria Games, but even though he never talked, but I did notice one detail. His cue mark was not the same when he had made his second appearance in Equestria Games compared to the first time he had made appearance. So in my opinion, is Blue Blood a good character? My French would have to say, heck no. He is not a good character at all. He's too selfish, too much jerk. Luna and Celestia at least have more common sense. I also had to say this. Rarity, be glad you didn't end up settled down with Blue Blood. I mean, who wondered how he could have been if she did end up marrying him? You don't know how much of a selfish jerk he is. Question is how he would have been like if they married, or even have a child, or even a big family together. Would been he been helping around with the kids? Mm, nope, he wouldn't. In fact, he didn't even liked when he had mud on his own hoops, all that. I mean, I don't think he would even have changed, even though he might had a second opinion, a second thought, if he realized his wife, Rarity, was expecting a child. But is it possible if he end up dating and marry Rarity? Is it possible that someone could somehow educating him, teaching him how to be a generous, kind, unselfish person? Possibly, yes. Who? Maybe the Celestia. Who other been who else would have been the best option to teach him that? Well, it's obvious. Celestia. He's Great Hind's aunt. Or Luna. But no, Cadence would also have been a good option. But I'm pretty much glad that Rarity never ended up with Blue Blood in the first place. I mean, think of it. Spike had been in love with her the whole time. I mean, how would he react if he found out she was officially dating Blue Blood? He would have been devastated. That's for sure. But yeah, so Blue Blood, in my opinion, is complete jerk. Didn't even show any sign of remorse or unselfishness when he was a first appearance at the gala. Honestly, though, I don't think he would even. But having him as a bad guy, which I might have to say is almost equal with zero. He may be a jerk, but he may not even have been as a bad guy. Could he have been a potential be a as potential villain? Honestly, though, in my opinion, no. He only cared mostly on himself. So I don't believe that Blue Blood would have been a big main villain. But in any case, Blue Blood is just a jerk, selfish character, only thinks about himself. He doesn't care about the characters or other opponents in society. And just to see how Rarity was much in love with him. How do you want to be with someone like him? But after how she later find out how his how the how personality he's how what type of personality he had, it makes sense that she refused to even had anything to do with him. And even though the gala Rainbow when she interacted with the Wonderbolts, especially when she saved Soren's pie, I had to say Soren and Rainbow are a perfect match. But unfortunately, there are so many characters within G4. Many fans love, some they don't like, some they hate. It makes sense. But is there any character from G4 that I hated much? Well, at first I really didn't like Discord. Well, that was when he was a bit as a still as a villain. But I have to admit to say I don't hate Blue Blood. I just think he's a jerk. I don't like his character, but I don't like hate. But the only character that I really hate from G4 is Sven Gallup, Colachora's former manager. Now that is a character that I really hate. He took the whole different level when it comes to selfishness. He treated other opponents who wanted. He personally used her for his own personal gain. And even when he made a reappearance in later season 6 and 7, I think it was, in the background, in Las Pesos, I don't think he looked very miserable. Ever since he was ever since he was ever since he was the manager of Colchora, I had to say, after when she realized what kind of person or opponent he was and what kind of personality he had, she fired him. And ever since she fired him, I have to say she exposed or even informed the whole industry about that, the business. I believe that she informed the whole music industry or music business about Sven Gallup, how he acted towards her and her fans and others, and that he used her for his own personal gain. Because back in the late, when he made those 2 second appearance in later on, he looked so unhappy. I think he will try to find another client to be the manager of, which in no luck at all. I mean, considering that Cold Shora is one of the biggest pop singers in Equestria at the time, and her words is strong. So I think that she had, I believe, a strong influence in that music business. So I think that she may have revealed what he did to her and her friends and other fans, to other big music producers and other, so that if he was trying to find another client to be the manager of, it only backfired. And I think he wouldn't have any other option to find. I don't think he would never find any other work within the music business. I think the best option for him to find any form of work is either garbage man or janitor. That is probably the best option for his style, considering considering how he treated Kolajora. I want to blame her that how he was treated afterwards, that he was never hired by anyone and that he couldn't find a client. I mean, that it's just going you to see how is that just that how you're being taught, how you treated your client and her friends or her fans, and also by using her by own personal gain. It's just going to show you, as long as you don't, if you treat her with that kind of things, it makes complete sense that you will end up being failing to find another client. So Sven Gallop itself as a character is the absolute worst character, and which one I really hate. But one of the most funniest characters in the show, one would be Cheese Sandwich. Oh boy, he is the absolute funny character. Even though he didn't speak in the last episode of G4, but I was a bit surprised at least one small detail. Gummy, Pinky's pet alligator. How big he were in the last episode. I I didn't even I thought maybe that he would even be bigger than he were from season 1 to season 8. I was like, okay, probably I was like he won't get bigger than that. But nope. He grown to as like a full size alligator. And also he didn't have teeth when he was that small. So I wonder, did he even have a big teeth when he was as a full grown alligator otherwise? Well, even if he did, I really hope at least that he was trained by Pinky not to do anything to harm other ponies. Otherwise, if he had attacked or even ate a pony, well, I think that the only option that they had is to take him away from Pinky and put him somewhere with other ponies, other alligators. But I don't think it would happen though, since it's a kid show, and knowing how that I don't think that most people know about this back, but in G5 they are this movie theater. They are showing some posters of different movies. One, Harry Trotter, reference Harry Potter. One other is Horns, with a reference to Jaws, about the shark. And another about, I don't remember exact name, but it was actually a reference to Terminator, Judgment Day, the second. Yeah, so I think I actually made a reference to that. And even though that um, even back in G5, there was one particular character um, that was really surprising. She mentioned Moondancer, and Moondancer is actually a friend of Twilight. But another thing is that most people don't probably don't know that her name is Elder Flower, and she's actually related to Moondancer, but not. She's not her great. She's not like her granddaughter or anything, but she's her. She is the great, 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 great aunt to. No wait. She is great, 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 great. She is at least four times great niece to Moondancer. Moondancer actually have a sister, which is Elderflower's direct descendant. And that is another surprise that they mentioned Moondancer. And there is actually one another character that's also made officially appeared in J4 and also made a brief appearance in G5, Tree Hugger. Even though not directly, but her face of Tree Hugger actually appeared in a museum in Mirtan Bay. But not in Make You Mark, but in Tell Your Tale. And yeah, there are so many characters that even when they were made, when they made Twilight appeared in G5, I was like, whoa. I mean, knowing that she made her first appearance in the first movie, okay, well, it's like great. At least on some backstory of what happened to them, but never mentioned what happened to them. I mean, considering at least that the main six were in their late 40s, early 50s, give or take, so makes sense. But having so many characters that just simply happen to appear in G5, if Make Your Mark had continued, I would not have been surprised that Spike had made more appearance in the city. But I'm surprised that he hasn't even made a single appearance in Tale Your Tale yet. He never appeared in season 1 or in season 2 so far as yet. But will he appear? It's possible. I just don't know exactly when though. And as far as I can tell, at least what I read though, that Tell Your Tale season 2 is more likely to just have 48 episodes. But I could be wrong. I just I'm just wish that they could maintain or had continue to have Make Your Mark. Uh, Make Your Mark was at least a much better. Well, I wasn't even better than G4, but it was good. It was good. But there are some fans that might speculate that some of the characters on the new main six are related to the old main six. Like Hitch could be related to Fluttershy. After all, he's able to talk to animals. But it's possible about that. But there's still one thing about the G5 that's when Twilight made her appearance in that hologram. There's only one part of that I still don't understand how it's even possible. She mentioned that now Earth Pulling Magic for the first time in Equestris history had been activated. I mean, how in a world would she have known about it? I mean, the series, that message must have been recorded during her reign, during her time of ruling, which could have been roughly 300 years earlier. Unless, I mean, here's the thing. We know the fact that Celestia had this uh, future vision ability when she was asleep. What if that Twilight had the same thing? Maybe that she could somehow predict or saw what's going to happen in the future and made this recording, I mean, that would have been the only answer that I could come up with. But if she didn't have the ability to see in the far in future, how in the world could she have known otherwise that the Earth ponies had their own magic now? That is itself is quite a big mystery. Unfortunately, we might not even know for sure how she even knew that. And yeah, it's just I'm I'm still puzzled about that part. But personally, I think it's more likely that she had this same ability as Celestia had, that Twilight somehow saw in the future what's going to happen, that the Earth ponies had their magic activated for the first time in history. And that's why she had a message part of the hologram when she mentioned that. But if she didn't have the ability to see in the future, how in the world she would even have any? I mean, how could she have known about it? Unless that she traveled in the future and saw it happen and went back again. But here's the thing: two known occasions that time travel did, in fact, happen. One is when her somehow, when Twilight herself, once she was still as a unicorn, traveled only a few hours in the past. But that was the limit. Second occasion when Starlight used the time travel spell that Star's World once made. But that scroll that contained the spell was destroyed. So without the scroll itself, if Twilight didn't know the actual spell, it couldn't make sense otherwise how she would travel in the future unless she was made her own time travel spell. I mean, also, why would she make that? And even if that would be the true, hear me out. If Twilight made a time travel spell and that she ended up in a time just before the magic had returned, she wouldn't be able to go back. But when the magic did return, she could have used the same spell again and go backward in time. But in the same case, I don't believe that even when that Twilight had the ability to time travel, I don't think she would even do anything to use that type of magic. Knowing when she and Spike went to several timelines, every time when Starlight tried to alter timeline, it caused so many different ones. One where Celestia were at war with the Crystal Empire, one where uh, Night Moon had officially took over and sent Luna, Celestia to the moon instead when she came back. Or in one other third option when the whole Equestria was complete wasteland. So time travel itself, when it comes to the MLP, I don't think Twilight would even take that risk to time travel. Based on her own experience, I don't think she would even be so crazy enough to travel either so far in the future. But ever since she was trying to turn into Alicorn, and later when she gets taller and more powerful, is it possible that she somehow gained the same ability as Celestia did, that she could somehow see in the future? Well, it's possible. But another thing that most people should know, that even if she saw that future, it is only one of many, many possible futures. Because the timeline itself is the time is always in a flux. It's never possible to predict exactly what's going to happen. If she's just seeing one possible future where what's going to happen, like how they defeat Opaline, in another possible future that Opaline managed to defeat her friends, Sunny and her friends, or Or if that one possible future that Opaline managed to capture Spike and the others maybe before the new main six arrive to the island? What if that most of the dragons are captured, but only like maybe just one or two are left behind? Because it wouldn't make sense. But the other thing is about that. Even if Twilight could want to travel into that time during another G5, she wouldn't have been able to do so because that future didn't even exist. It's the same thing for us. If we had ability to time travel, we can go as far as possible in back in time. Like, hey, we could even go as far as back to as dinosaurs were still walking around on the planet. Hey, we can even go as far as back as the time the universe was created. But we could not go further behind that. We know for a fact that the universe was itself created about 13.8 billion years ago. If we want to travel 15 or even 20 billion years, we wouldn't even do so. And if we want to travel from this year and maybe to the year 3000, it wouldn't work because that future doesn't exist. Because the future hasn't even happened yet. Same thing for in the for the MLP world. Same thing. Time travel in the future might not even work because it hasn't even happened yet. So time travel itself in the MLP world is not possible. Travel to far future. I mean, what if that they want to try to travel 10,000 years in the future? It wouldn't have worked. I mean, Sunny and her friends probably could travel back in time, but if they could, they can travel maybe 300 years in history back in time to time out Twilight's ruling. But they could travel 300 years forward in time, but only to the time when they left. They cannot even go as even a 1 minute further. If you would travel back in time, you can only go so far in back in future to the time when you left, not even further than that. That is what how time travel itself works. And so if how that's a possibility, but then how did Twilight had known about what's gonna happen while she mentioned Earth Pony Magic had once for the first time in a quest's history activated? How could she have known? If she couldn't have traveled in the future herself, or if she even had the ability to predict or even see in the future, how in the world could she have known otherwise? It's a very unlikely someone in the future traveled to the past and gave her the information. Well, I mean, even if Twilight had the spell for time travel, she known from her own experience it's dangerous. It is absolute dangerous. Because if you change one single thing in the past, for example, if you had known that your father was supposed to be dying, let's say, with if you're saying that your father supposed to be passed away 5 years earlier in the disaster or maybe in an accident, if you travel 5 years in the past, making sure that your dad never was involved in that car accident, and then you go back and then travel back to your own time, 5 years back in time in the future, and your dad may still be alive. But here's the thing: even if you would travel back in time only a couple of years, prevent your dad or mom from dying in an accident, your dad and mom might still be possible to be alive even when you travel back in time or back to your own time again. There's always a 50-50. chance that your mom or dad is still alive, or they could have died in another in another different other way. Maybe just a couple of months later when it's supposed to happen. Because that is what it is. Time travel is very unpredictable. But another thing is, time travel should not be messed around with. So if we had time travel, that is one thing you don't mess around with. Because if you think from one point of view, like if someone were going back as so far, say before World War II had happened, even started, killing Hitler, those millions of people that was once supposed to be dying in the war never died, or those events that's going to take place after the war, like United Nations, for example, may not have even been started, and those countries that eventually would have become independent after the war may not have even happened. That's another thing. And just another thing, those 6 million Jews that's what has supposed to be died in those concentration camps. If you travel in time, prevent what happened, those 6 million people may not have died in the order they're supposed to be died. They might have died maybe decades later on. That's another thing. You don't travel in time and prevent something big happened because time travel has unpredictable events. I mean, who would not even saying this? If you change something, even if your thing is small, but could lead to major changes. One of the things that might have even possible that you not even yourself cannot expect it is that you may not even. What if you travel in time and do something in your own hometown where your both parents are living in, and you may do something and you eventually realize you can't. And even if you did travel in the future back to your time where you traveled from, you may realize something. Neither your mom or dad never actually ever end up meeting. You may not have been born. Maybe you might be born, but your dad may not be your actual dad. What if like your mom end up marrying someone else and he end up being your dad instead? Or another thing is, if you did do something changes, you can't go back in time. If you travel and change something in the past and you go back in the future, that time, that timeline, what you are from, had been erased. It doesn't exist. And it only end up in an ultimate timeline. I can give some example. There's this there was this show on Fox where a guy traveled to the 1960s to assassination of Kennedy. He prevented his of Kennedy's assassination. Instead, he didn't win that particular president election. He lost, and he couldn't prevent the Cuban Missile Crisis, which eventually led United States was bombed by nuclear missiles. So that is one thing that you really don't should not mess around with time travel. But if you were if you were a historian or even history researcher, that's one thing you can do. Like if you were much interested in history, like you want to solve some of the big mysteries of the past. Like say, for once, you want to find out who built the Great Pyramids of Egypt. Or if you want to travel as far as back as to prove, like if Atlantis actually existed, or even if Jesus was real. For example, if you will travel back in time only to study history and maybe try to figure out to solve some big mysteries, that's one of the things that you probably can do. But as long as you don't get yourself involved and change the time, that's fine. Because even if we were happen to invent time travel, maybe we have just simply invent or came up with international laws that will make that nobody travels in time to change anything. There is one thing about the time travel is called grandfather paradox. It's like you travel 50 years back in time, killing your own grandfather, which meaning if you do that, your own dad won't be born. That means you cease to exist. Well, that unless you kill your grandfather after your father is born, that would have no effect much. But if you kill your grandfather before your father is born, that is what is the grandfather paradox is called. Same thing as if you go back in time and kill your grandmother. Same thing. So time travel is a dangerous. You really should not get yourself involved with time travel. That's what's one of the things. I mean, time travel as back in future movies. Like Doc Brown supposed died in the third movie in the Wild West. But Marty went back in time and prevent that from happening, which he shouldn't have done. But he couldn't just see his old friend die. And even in the first movie, when he traveled back in time and how he remember that Doc Brown was killed by those um, was killed by being when he was shot to death. He wanted to change that, but even the younger Dr. Brown himself told Marty not to do anything, not to tell him anything about the future, but eventually did. And Doc Brown, he was wearing this protected vest, like the same similar as the police are wearing, a bullet vest, and it saved his life. So changing timeline itself is would have been the absolute stupid thing anyone can do. And as in Star Trek series, for example, when time travel became possible, there were this organization that was observing time to make sure that no one did any changes. Only allowed people to travel in the past to study, but nothing else. That's what it's about the time travel. I mean, if you like saying, if you were if you were the only child in your family and your dad passed away when you were young, before you even maybe your dad passed away in an accident or something, maybe before you were even born, or even when you were so young you don't even remember. And if you travel back in time to the time when your dad was still alive, and if you interacted with him, just talk to him and without telling him who you were, like say you were just a friend, that you were just a family friend to another friend, saying you're a friend to him, that you're a friend to someone else that he knows, and that you just want to talk to him, get to know him, to know how he's as a person. Okay, that's fine, but as long as you don't reveal who you are, and I mean, for example, if as this guy, for example, if if Malachi had if he had ability to talk to someone in his life, let's say say that if he wanted to talk to his great grandmother that he was close to, and if he could somehow travel back in time, even though she knew that he is who he is, even though he looked maybe older, even if he did tell his great grandmother that he traveled from the future only that he could see her once again, but also to tell her to keep this a promise from his family, from his uncle and his mom, just to make sure that because since his father is not much involved in his life anymore. I mean, if I, for example, I if I could travel time, I would have traveled as far as back to see my grandparents from my dad's side. They passed away when I was just very young. I have basically no memories of them at all. I would have traveled it back in time to talk to them. Well, the thing is, I wouldn't be able to talk to my grandfather since he didn't speak much Swedish. So that was just boring. But I would have taken the opportunity to time travel back to that time so I could talk to them, at least seeing them maybe from a distance. That's another thing about it. As long as I don't change time to if anything. I mean, what if I go as far as back in time and change something, even though seems very in something that may not seem to be very important, but eventually could have way drastic change in the time. It's just one of something like that.
Mm.
But Malachi, if you could travel in time, what would you do? How far would you go, and what would you do?
I'd probably try and find somebody to prevent the New York Stock Exchange so that no taxes even fucking existed.
Huh. Well, well, I
Because
mean,
because I understand because people understand that having homes for when that's everyone needs a home, needs food, water too, and they're supposed to be buying food while also paying for their house. When we don't work for the government works for us. So that is that's kind of a complete almost switcheroo with how
true.
messed up governments can be these days. And
Yeah,
taxes are the main screwball evil reason that you get what I'm saying. Why
yeah,
they're the prime evil under the government's root.
yeah. But unfortunately, even if you did, that's one of the things. And even if anyone asks you what you want to, wherever you want to do, or if one of you want to go, or if you want to do something, that's one of the major. That's one of the major rules when it comes to time travel. You don't
I
travel
probably
back in time, and
I probably also have a paper sign saying this document of saying no taxes ever should ever be existed may never should will never be abolished by anyone, no matter who.
yeah.
Make it
But
perfectly
here's
clear.
yeah, and here's another thing. If you travel as if you travel back to the say back to the 80s or 90s and you somehow dropped your smartphone or iPhone in that time, that is one other thing that you really cannot do because just imagine if you have this. I mean, look this. Um, for example, since the smartphones started getting around in the 90s, even though there was not that everyone has access to those, and you somehow drop your smartphone in that time, just look how since the smartphones started being coming around in the I think it was in sometime like 10 years ago or something. But if you drop your smartphone in that time, Instead of being invented in, like, say, 2010 or 2012, could have been invented as
I
1995 or
wouldn't even take a phone.
1996 instead. And exactly, but I mean, if that happened, if someone would travel time, and just not only that, if that the phone had contained information, but here's one thing about it. Even if someone would bring their smartphone or iPhone back in time, just like travel back to the 90s, the phone would have been completely useless. You wouldn't even be able to call anyone on the phone back then. Because that type of technology, the compounds, the components in the phone didn't exist in the 90s or the 80s. But you can still use their phone to charge it in the, like normally. You can take photos with it or maybe take videos of it, but you can't call at all. I have always assumed that you can call with your smartphone even if you travel 10 or 20 or even 50 years in the past. It wouldn't even work. It's
I
like,
mean, people who give money should keep their money, not and should really have to pay a fee, not even on their house, because that's the main thing that should be like like paid for. I mean, I understand food and anything they want to buy and drink, but their house should not be the one thing they pay for. The government should help them half pay on their house too, if they're the ones that helped build it for them.
yeah,
If that
but
makes
still,
sense.
yeah. But even if you wanted to do something like that in the past, the outcome of that, it's impossible to tell what it's going to be like. I mean, for example, taxes are one of the things to be able to is was helping your country's economic finances. Like that's one of the things that helps to provide for better self education, healthcare, defenses. And if there's no one have to pay the taxes, where will the money go? Where will it come from? I mean, if you can't pay taxes, then if the one like if someone like even okay, if someone will travel so far in past, prevent money from being developed or invented, how would you be able to get things today? Because back then, before money was even much invented, people traded items. The Vikings, for example, they when they travel as far east to like in Turkey or Middle East, they traded fur to other items. And even when they did bring back some coins from Islamic countries, they didn't even use the money for themselves. Either to bury it in the ground for a future use, or they melt it down for something else. Because my country, the Vikings, didn't even have any particular currency back then. And even when we did start using currency, because we did use one point, not small coins. We used one time, um, we used one particular coin, but it was not round, it was square shaped. And um, it was big. I think maybe, I think it was maybe like
On the size of the palm of your hand.
bigger than that. I think it was. Let me see first. Uh,
I mean, if not every time tax, I would just say house taxes. That should never exist because
yeah,
even
that makes
though
sense.
because that's one kind of tax that should never exist.
Yeah, and also, game guys, wishes happy Easter to you. Right. Here we go.
Mhm.
The coins they were in a had a certain weight, and it was about 41 pounds. And they were like big ones. They're like square shaped, made of copper. And 41 pounds in weight. And they were, see, uh, damn, where are they? Um, well, they were around 40 pounds at most. And that's what how big they were. And this is just one of the big currency that we had in my country. Paper money was not even invented for much later on. In fact, Chinese was the first ones to invent that. And in fact, they even invented uh, the paper press long before Europeans did. But yeah, but I understand what you mean. Pay taxes
They
for
did
houses
lots of
shouldn't.
stuff, including giving us our virus.
Yeah, but since a lot of things did change, I mean, if you look at so many other other things that has
Also,
happened for us.
if possible, if possible, do you think there would have been some way to make a presidential rule where if someone becomes president, then they should continue being president until the day they die?
Um, I may have to say no on that because it's impossible to tell exactly how.
Because I have argued because I have said and argued on this many times before, even though there's
Oh, bye, Malachi. He had some problem with his connection or something. But I understand what he's saying. I know that for a fact that China, they have a president. Until a couple of years ago, they had, as US has, 2 terms, but they changed that to a lifetime. So if a president is elected, he can be sitting as long as he lives. Even Trump, at one point during his reign, during his time as a president, he also wished that they could had in um, had this inducted in the constitution. But unfortunately, it's not as simple it is as some people think it is. First, you need support from both the Congress, Senate, and the U.S. Representative House. And because changing the Constitution isn't that simple, it's very difficult. And even though one president set was sitting for 3 terms, not two, he was elected 3 times. Now, for each time you sit for 4 years, so he sat for normally you sit for 8 years, but this particular president sat for um uh sometimes my math is not good, but he sat for 12 years. But that was during the World War II. And I think that maybe not that why he didn't they never had another election is because you know um that since the Americans were mostly focused on the war and the government was mostly focused on the war in the Second World War. And I also think that it so having to spend so much time in campaigns for election, I don't think that most of the even the American people have. I don't think they have any interest of thinking of election. So I think that when this particular president, I think it was Truman, when he was the president the third time in his third term, which after that happened, and after the war was over, they changed the constitution so that the president can only sit for for only 8 years. Even though Trump he wished that he could have changed that, but it is not that simple as it is. You need support from both Senate, Congress, and the U.S. Representative House. Otherwise, it's not like it's like he can't sign a document and say, nope, nope, here we go, make it perfectly legal. It isn't that simple. Connection problem?
Yeah, even
Fuck,
even though
fuck
I
so.
had, even though I have a lot of storage in my file because I upgraded. Apparently, I have a whole bunch of junk files throughout my online stuff through websites. But what I was trying to say before I was rudely cut off is, do you understand the definition of the word quarantine?
Yeah.
Do not. It's comes from an Italian practice of isolating ships 40 days. Barack Obama should continue being president until until someone either shot him out of rage or until he actually died of heart failure, whatever. But he, I understand there's lots of people that hate Donald Trump, but he and Obama warned us of that virus and specifically said, do not bring them in whatsoever. And what does everyone do? They laugh it off, bring them in, and think it's just a joke. Look how many people died when that virus came here. I don't know if that counts as murder, but that was straight up just wrong.
Yeah, it might be sense. Make sense of that. But it's still, even if there's someone want to be a president for a longer term or even lifetime, like I said, it's not that possible that simple either, because you need to have a big support from the big votes from both Senate and Congress and the U.S. represent the House. Because it's not like the president himself can just sign a document saying, now now we make it officially legal. It's
I
not that
would
simple.
love I would love to see one election where everyone just chooses who they want for president and doesn't assign anyone for Republican or Democrat. Just check none of the above on all of them. Because we keep having the same people elect themselves when they're getting paid more than all of us and don't do a damn thing about helping and changing this damn government that is running under our skin. We're just begging on our money.
Well, and including as many as I can say this, even my parents and some of my from work had said they shouldn't put Trump or Biden as the president next time because they're old. They're one among the oldest so far. They probably should have put someone who is at least
Ronald Reagan was
younger.
at an old age when he was elected president, and I don't see anyone
True.
complaining about him being at his age.
I don't even know, but I mean, I think the most reason is because why they think that about Trump and Biden is because um how much stupid shit both have been doing for the past two elections. That's all. But but I'm just saying that they shouldn't put anyone that's so old on the power. You never know. If I mean,
I mean,
since Trump is in his late 70s, he's 77. Biden is 81, and they're both in the zone of the risk of they could simply have been if they are in fact in the same age range of the if they had heart attack or stroke, it could be devastating for them. I'm just saying it's just I mean, what if the next president or next time someone wants, and he is 90 years old or even 95, and
but
he steps down from when he's 99 or 94. Think
but
about it.
Swedish. One important thing. You're forgetting one important thing with old people being elected. They probably have more experience and probably more good experience and better ideas in helping make government better. Even if some people think fresh power at a young age can do good things. Old people that have had experiences in their own ways can find ways in changing government too.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that, at least from the point of view that they shouldn't put a man as a president when he's, let's say, around Biden's age, in the 80s, because they're in the so I mean, there's a higher risk for them if they had a stroke or even a heart attack. It could be devastating effect on them. Even there is, in fact, one president. I don't remember exactly which one it was, but he had a stroke, and even though he wasn't, it was actually his wife who took care of the politics during the remaining time. If they want to put a president, if he is in his late 30s, early 40s, maybe 50s, okay, that's fine. At least a little bit younger, but it's like, I mean, if I was an American and I want to be a president or even a candidate for it, I wouldn't have been able to do so because I had to wait at least 2 more years for them to do so. In fact, many had wished, even Arnold Schwarzenegger himself, had wished that he could have been tried to be as a president. That's the problem. You cannot do that if you're not internationally born um, American citizens. Only if you're.
I I know about that too. And you know how I knew that? From watching an episode of the first $1 million winner of One versus 100, where one contestant takes on 100 people, and if he eliminates all of them with questions, they win $1 million. This guy was up against on his on one of his questions. He said, in the 2008 election, who was the which of these celebrities would be eligible enough to be elected president of the United States? And um, I've I forgot who the first one was, but the other two choices were Viggo Mortensen and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he and the guy eliminated B. Arnold. He was an Austrian all the way and not really a naturalized citizen. And he eliminated A. I forgot what his name was, but he was someone who had like a thick Scottish brogue going for it. So he locked in Viggo Mortensen, and he was correct on that one.
Yeah, but
And
even
eliminated
so,
he eliminated 8 women for five for a quarter of a million.
even though there is actually one movie where they reference that Arnold Schwarzenegger were, in fact, the president, they actually have somehow changed the laws on that. But to be a president, you had to
I
at
mean,
least be
if they didn't have
35 or
the,
older.
I mean, if they didn't have anything against it, that I honestly could see him being a kind of a good president.
Yeah, but
I
here's
mean,
another
he's
thing.
loved by people because of his Terminator films.
Yeah, but here's one thing though. Now, okay, now these days we know for a fact that if I would had to move to the US and became a citizen, I wouldn't have been unable to even try to be a president. But you and Cody had a chance to do so when you had in that age range. But how about this? What about when Washington, for example, when he was a president, he was elected afterwards by the people as since the people loved him for so that much. They choose him to be the first president. But here's another thing. Even though he
But
was born in the US, but I don't know if if that law existed at the time. I mean, maybe let's say from this. If that law made that you didn't exist at the time when the first when Washington was elected as president. Let's assume that law didn't exist. So if he had passed away or stepped down, and if I was living in America, I'd say if I traveled back in time and lived in America at the time I elected, if I could be a president, even though I wasn't born in America, maybe that law didn't exist. Maybe that it was only became into power maybe at some point afterwards. Because who knows? Maybe that law didn't exist at the time. But now these days it does. But
Mm.
but it's only a curious thought though. I mean, considering that when President Washington, for example, he was the first commanding officer for the army, and then he was elected as a
Mhm.
president. And who knows if that law that only made only national citizens could have been as the president.
And it also wouldn't surprise me if James Monroe knew and have feeling Washington was soon going to be president in his own right. The reason I say it is because I don't know if anyone knows this or not, but if you was to look at the painting of Washington crossing the Delaware on that boat, James Monroe is one of the men on that boat with him. He's the one holding the American flag on that boat. And
Exactly. Yeah. So even if Trump, even though that Washington was elected as the president, we may not know for certain if that law that make only those born in a country could be born at be as the president, or if that was even made at the same time when the
well,
first president or
well, well, considering many of the presidents we've had back then weren't particularly, I I kind of have feeling Martin Van Buren wasn't a U.S. citizen. Big reason being is because I found out through a trivia question he was the only U.S. president to not speak English as a first language.
hmm, that might be a bit difficult. And but here's another thing.
I think he
I don't.
spoke. I think he spoke either Spanish or Dutch as a
Hmm.
language.
Well, here's another thing about that. When Obama became president, there were a lot of people that was skeptical about his true origin. After all, since his mother was from Hawaii and his father was from Kenya, people assume that they
He was
demanded
African.
to. Yeah, since he's half African, half white, they demanded. Some people demanded that he show them his birth certificate to prove that he was born as a citizen, not from a different country. But I
And
do
all he had,
wonder.
and if that was the case, all he had to do was show he was born in Hawaii, either in Honolulu or on the island of Maui. And they said, "All right, you're an American citizen. You're cleared to be uh, elected
Exactly.
president. You can be
But
president wherever you want. You don't need to judge people based on their skin color. I mean, even if we
exactly.
had African American people born here in America, that makes them officially American, not all the way African American, even though their parents and friends are somewhat descended from Africa.
Hmm. And here's another thing. You know that when Hillary was in the election along the same time with Biden, with
Oh,
Trump, she was could have been the first elected female president. But here's another thing: could a woman try to be a president back in say shortly after say in the late 1700s and early 1800s? Could a woman try to be a president? I really don't believe so, because back then the women had no voting rights, and
hmm.
a lot of women had no basically don't know had didn't have the same rights as they have today. So it's possible that even if a woman wanted to be a try to be as a president, they probably would be dismissed already, or even outlawed as the life of life
Mm.
would have been declared as a laughing stock. But at the
Well,
same time, it would have been something though.
I mean,
But as it is, there's only a matter of time before the U.S. has its first female president. Even if okay, even if Biden would somehow step down right now before the election, Kamala, his the vice president, would be the official president out the remaining time. So indirectly, she would be the first female president by. But there is one. That president that I did mention that had a stroke. His wife. was the one to took care of the politics while he was still suffering. And that was not even revealed for many many years later. So some people call her as the first official or unofficial female president of the U.S.
I mean,
But
there's probably lots of other women who would probably do good as a president that in their own right, not just Hillary, even though she is technically Bill's wife.
yeah, I mean, considering how many, but like I said, back in the late 1700s and early, and throughout 1800s, no woman would have been able to even try. If they would try to be as a candidate for as a president, they probably would even been able to, because back then women hadn't had much rights as they do today. They could even vote if they wanted to. And even in my country,
But
women couldn't
the
even
country of
vote until
Switzerland,
like,
but the country of Switzerland managed to put a twist around on that when they had women vote in 1972, I think, or 1971. It was one of those 2 years.
my country allowed women to vote in 1921, or was it nine? No, I think it was 1920 or 1921. So yeah, as a female president in the U.S. in the 1800s would have been possible because they couldn't vote, and they didn't have the same basic rights as they have now these days. And I understand that. But when I first find out that Hillary Clinton was trying to elect as a president, I was quite surprised because I would have been quite surprised if she did end up that. And I later learned that Iceland, I think, was one of the first in the world to have a female president. I know that John McCain, that was part of the election in 2018, 2008 or 2009. He can't be elected anymore because turned out he had passed away. But it's just, I mean, being as a president in the US, you had to first been born in the country and you had to be at least 35 or older in order to do so. Because if you're younger than 35, you can't be trying. Even if you're 18 or 20, oh, I'm a legal age. I can try to be elected for president. But nope, you can't. And I don't know if the 35 age has always been from the very start, or if that will change much later on. I don't know. But and also thing that when you're a president, you actually even get a salary for that. But I know at least from one president, Trump, he declined to get that salary, so he didn't get paid as a president. But the only
Well,
one,
that would probably depend. That would probably depend on how much they were going to give him for a salary, and if it wasn't much, then he would have had. Then it would have been up to him to either accept or decline it in the first place.
true, but even if he had accepted his president's salary, and he would have, and despite that he is a businessman and that he is a quite wealthy man, but if he had accepted that, he would have no access to his own organization's assets anymore. That finances he would have complete untouched because he would have been able to use that money. Because when he was elected as a president, he had to step down as a president and owner of the organization to his one of his sons. And he couldn't try to get access to that find that the money that his organization had. That was another thing about it. And I only know for one fact that there's only one president in US history that he didn't even sit in power, not even for a year. He died 6 months after he was
William
elected.
Henry Harrison.
Yeah, he died from pneumonia. because he was elected when he was swearing the oath. It was during the rain, and not only that, there was a few presidents that died in the White House, and for many people was quite and the cause at the time was a big mystery. No one didn't know exactly what was the cause of it, but they later turned out that was the sewer system was the main cause because it turned out that the White House didn't had any, or Washington at the time didn't had any pure clean water in the sewer system or the pipes. It turned out there was some bacteria in the water caused them to have severe stomach pains, and even directly, indirectly, Washington was killed, not naturally death. He was sick, but his own doctor at the time had this practice that he took blood from his arm. And that practice was quite common in the medieval times as well. They I don't remember how to pronounce it in English, but they
Well,
were
the only problem with is that I don't think, despite how old the element of metal is, I'm not even sure if medieval times back then would have had the proper syringes to actually draw blood from people.
well, yeah. But here's the thing: the doctor dropped some blood from his arm, not like just a few, like not like a small bottle or anything. It was just quite a amount, and they did that like I think 2 or 3 times. And when they were finished, he had lost, I think it was either a quarter or half of his own body blood. So he died of a lack of blood, and it's just horrible. And even though if the doctors had known better not to doing that, in fact, this is another medical procedure that was even well common back not only in still me as in medieval times, but also in the prehistoric, is that they cut a piece of the skull, like drilled a drill in the skull, and remove that because, and I mean that practice is kind of used even today in medicine. Like if you're having a if your brain was swelling from an accident, and they remove a piece of your skull in order to release the some of the pressure. And that type of practice was used in prehistoric times and even in medieval times. But in medieval times, it was mostly because they believed that your soul, or at least your brain, or at least that your body was had evil spirits like demons or something like that. In order to have those demons being released, it was had to be drilling in your head and open the skull like that for them to disappear. And even though that I don't know exactly how many, but one of say in I had to say maybe it could have been like what, maybe 5 or 6 of 10 people who had been this happened to survived that procedure. And even back in the prehistoric times, people actually even had dentists. They used flint as a as a as a as a drill, and that is and I don't know if they had anything for the pain if they had to chewing something like say tobacco or something in order to have the kind of the same pain killing effect or making someone drowsy. Now these days you have the gas or for that, but back then who knows? But people could have been if the people back in the 1800s or like that had if they had the access to the modern medicine we have now, like um, penicillin or like that, what if it just could have saved? I know the fact that one nurse, a young lady from the UK, she wanted to be a nurse, but her family, her parents, was strictly against that because the nurses at that time was well known for being alcoholics once. But she studied a lot of medicine in secret. She borrowed a lot of books of medicine and anatomy, and her family was a friend to that time's war minister. And that war minister actually had asked their daughter to go to Crimea Peninsula, near part of the Ukraine is. There was a war that was going on there, and the soldiers died like flies. The mortality rate was like around 90%. But when after she had introduced her new system, it dropped to nearly like I think it was 1 or 2%, running from 90. So her system saved more soldiers than it is. And so you know the doctors when they put their scalpels in uh, like boiling something like that and putting some uh, certain substance on the knives and scalpels to remove bacteria. That system was not really much common back then because people didn't believe. Because if a one doctor had just taken care of a one surgery, he could then simply go to the to the maternity ward to help a woman to give birth to a baby, which could spread those bacteria from the one surgery that surgeon patient to the woman, and she could die from bacteria, and the baby could die also. Have you heard the listeria, the virus, or something like that? It was actually a doctor in UK um, came up with this idea, and he tried this, and somehow lowered the risk. He presented this idea to the medical schools and all that, but unfortunately, at the time, not many people didn't take this quite serious. But they were until much later on uh, that system was more accepted, and thanks to that, is widely being used in all surgeries around the world.
Mm. I mean, the, in earlier you heard me say one election where people can check none of the above. I have one point for saying all that for saying that reason. Presidents, even though they work in a cabinetry, their people, the people the president works with, should not have anything against any idea that they say. If a president has an idea that they're going to help change this country, and everyone should listen to the ideas first, but denying the best ideas they have that could actually help them is basically the wrongdoing. So, like, say, if someone wanted to eliminate house taxes for all house owners, and because that could help us, save more money and help paying our cars and putting more food in the house, that I can understand possibly doing. And if someone was to deny that, they people would argue on why they think it should be accepted. And
Exactly.
but the president technically should be the one with the final word on whether it's acceptable or not the people he works with. Because he's the leader of the nation. They're not. So them denying any ideas he has is wrong. Any ideas he has in hearing all the arguments and claims should be the one with the final word on yes or no, not who he works with.
Yeah, it makes sense. But it also that I mean, paying house taxes may perhaps may that like paying mortgage of the house is probably not even better. Something that they probably should even had involved as well, too at all. But paying the bills and rent for that probably would should have remained. I mean, if you own the house and only you're paying for some of the bills like for electricity and water and all that, gas, okay, that's fine. But if there's someone else owned the house or department where you're living in, and you have
You
to pay
know,
for that.
they've had commercials go on for a while on people get actually choosing how much they want to pay for their car, no matter what kind of car it is. They choose the amount they want to pay per month, and that's what they're going to pay. They should do it with new house owners. Let
Hmm.
them choose the price they want to pay per month, no matter how much electricity how they use and how much square foot the house is. So, like, say you have a 1,966 square foot house. You chose to pay, I don't know, 700 a month. That is the amount you pay. Nothing higher, nothing lower. An exact 700 is how much you pay every month. That should be an option for house owners. And once they make that decision, the government should not be allowed to change that amount.
Hmm.
That I feel is the one thing that house owners should be optional too.
Yeah, it makes sense. Hey. But anyways, how's your Easter been so far?
Well, I'm cooking dinner, the Easter dinner right at the moment. She ended up finishing dessert last night, which is apparently some marine jello pies.
Hmm. I don't think I actually tried that once though. Uh, for my Easter, we didn't do much.
Mm,
Um, we actually had some dinner, but my brother showed up today with his girlfriend though. Oh, I did mention earlier that in the stream that when I was younger, when I was 13, 14, I never actually had those type of egg counts as the Americans do, having giving a basket of picking those small chocolate eggs hidden somewhere. Never did that. But my dad did something else. He had those a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger egg filled with candy, but he gave us not one map, but multiple ones. My brother had one map, and he found his second map in the oven. Even though the oven wasn't even turned on, though, but still. We did that for a couple of years, but now these days it just give us filled. Though my dad went to three different stores yesterday to find candy eggs that someone empty that he could fill with candy himself, but he couldn't find any of those. So after like a fourth store, he found three candy eggs that was filled. So we bought those, emptied them, and bought some. And he had bought around 6 pounds of candy and put some of the candy in that instead. I
mm.
went okay, but yeah. And since I normally don't stream on Sundays, but since I have streamed over there before, um, when the holiday is end up happening on those particular days, like well, depend on when the day is. Like I said, last year for Christmas, I had to do the stream a little bit earlier since we celebrate Christmas the day before you guys, and that makes sense. So, and since Easter itself it isn't a permanent day each year. It's always
Mm.
random so next year it's going to be in April. Next time when Easter is in March, it's in 2027. At least what I can
Yeah.
think of it is. And currently, I've been working on a new MLP quiz. 31 questions so far, and
You
it's mixed
you
between.
know, you should. I have an idea for one of your quizzes. You should watch lots of your stories, the ones you've made, and do questions based on each of them. From the kids' names, what the types of points they married. Some of the ideas going on in the story, like
mm,
which ideas were not in said story. Which upon has not been a story you've done yet.
dude,
That'd be that'd be very
um,
interesting.
dude. First of all, yeah, and since I have many stories still that's well still left to do, um, I did mention once that Figart sent me emails with the ideas. Um, I did. I can just look at it right now. It says it has 371 totaled. But I can
Hmm?
say right now, it's not even close to that. I can give you an exact number, but you will be quite surprised.
700.
Nope, it's more than that. More than 900.
928.
Let's say it's more than 1200.
You say more than 900, you say more than 1,200. And what is it mostly based on? Video games?
Envelope B, actually.
Uh,
Um,
I'm guessing some of them are V2, like a second version of some of them.
hmm? Hmm?
I've seen you do two versions of some of your stories.
Probably. Let's see how many are. Come on, come on, come on. Ah, here we go. It's about. Okay. First of all, I had to do
If
put
you're jokingly
this.
saying it's not more than 1,500, I will smack myself silly.
First of all, I had to remove this three. They're just not stores that I'd been asked. Just uh. Okay. Remove those two and remove this two. Are not stores. That they're more like commercial or something like that stuff. Come on. There we go. Total would be. Come on, where are you? Come on, tell me. Come on. 1,658.
Son of a bitch.
Right? And I mean, that is just only a fraction. I mean, if you go look at the one on Twiboro or Derpyboro, it's 200,000 plus. At least as
Damn.
far as I last time I checked, at least. But those if you let's say from based on those shippings, not all of them cannot be even being used. And I did mention this before. Some of them are where Twilight are dating a book, or somewhere like when an
No, no,
adult
no, no,
character,
no.
yeah, an adult character is dating someone younger, like it's like Fluttershy with Sweetie Belle at her young age, and some of that is
Heck
just big
no.
no. Nah, exactly.
I
That's a
mean,
big no.
I mean, kids can date the princesses as long as they're past 20 years old.
Yeah. I mean, I did that one in my past stories when, like, say, even Applejack, Apple Bloom and Sakura. But I make sure
No, I
that
was
she was in her.
not. I mean, that is a good example, but the example I was thinking of was Pipsqueak and Luna.
Exactly.
I mean, what were the odds of a chance that you did Sweeba with Cadence. Like Cadence was already princess around the time when Luna came back, and she continued on ruling princess. But Sweeba had fondness for Cadence, and she waited till she was like the age of 23 and started dating Cadence.
Possible.
I mean, I could kind of see that as a good possible story.
Yeah, and even if I would do a story between, say, let's say if I would do another story of Luna dating, I don't know, Scootaloo or Apple Bloom, it
I
could
was
still
thinking,
work
I was
as long
thinking
as I am
Luna and Chip Cutter.
possible.
I mean,
But as
that's a
long as
good
that they
story.
can, yeah. But here's the thing: some people like will put out, "Hello, there's a big age gap between Pipsqueak and Luna. They're 1,000 years. She's 1,000 years older than he is." Well, I can give you another example.
Um,
Fluttershy and Discord. Discord is
Luna
1,000 years old.
technically Luna wouldn't have been 1,000 because look at her age back when Celestia vanished. She looked like she was in her 400 to 500s when the time she was
Yeah,
banished.
true though, but we don't really know exactly how old Luna and Celestia are.
But if I was to guess, because Star Swirl told Celestia, I cannot believe how tall you've gotten. Well, it has been over 1,000 years. She is over 1,000 years. Luna, at her height when she came back, looked like she was in her 400 to 500s. So that
Yeah,
made her 1,000 years younger than Tia, technically.
true. I mean, after all, since she had been on the moon for that long, it's like she hasn't even aged.
Which would
And
tell
as
you the moon, that moon banishing has its own magic. Meaning, if you're
yeah,
518 and you're banished under, you're still 518 until you are officially released.
and here's another thing about Luna though. We know that she has ability to walk in the dream realm, right? But
Hmm.
in fact, in the comics, there's one where Rarity becomes Nightmare Moon. It turns out that the moon, that Luna isn't the one that controls the dreams. She's not the one that makes the dreams. Because it turned out there are small creatures, intelligent small creatures on the moon, the ones that actually that makes the dreams and even controls them, not Luna. But that is not canonical because otherwise it will be complete messed up. Because if we're not at that as a canonical as a true, then who is the one that's saying that if those are if those stores are canon and the one in the show are canon, which one is the real canon? That's another problem. And
Mm.
as in the light is season 10 comic series that made Twilight is queen, not princess. And I don't know if she's actually queen. I don't know. Even Celestia was originally supposed to be queen, but that was also changed into to princess. Oh, I did mention this earlier in the stream. You know Blue Blood, right?
The jerk.
Yeah, and he's 32 times great nephew to Celestia and Luna. But if you are a nephew to someone, that means that either you are either you're the son or you're the son of someone's brother or sister. But since he is so many times far, and since we know neither Celestia or Luna have a kid, and that means would they have a sibling? Possible. Because you can't be a nephew to someone if you don't have if the couple that the other ones had no sibling. But here's another thing: if they had a sister or brother, wouldn't that sibling be an alicorn? Wouldn't that make an also an alicorn? Possible. But here's another thing about that: we don't even know anything about if that's true or not. After all, even if that, like I said to Cody in the stream earlier when I talked about that, it's possible that neither that they maybe that um maybe if they had a blood related sibling, if it's a brother or sister, it's possible that one could eventually have a child and eventually continue the line onwards. and had eventually will end up to Blue Blood. But how did
Mm.
he end up being as a unicorn? Well, another thing is it's possible that the rest of the, even though that this sibling did marry another normal pony, they could maybe have an alicorn as a child, but it should have been mentioned.
And Case proved that when they had Flurry, natural born
Exactly.
alicorn, and she had her wings
Well, and here,
instantly.
yeah, and here's another thing. And even if that is true that they actually have a sibling, but it's another possibility is that that sibling wasn't even blood related. What if their parents, adopted a child and that eventually got married and have a child of its own, and that continued and then all the way down to blue blood? And
That
in sense,
that that would well make sense in your eyes, but technically that would be messed up because there's a little bit of something wrong with what you just said, with what your
yeah,
parents adopted, because their parents nor their any sisters they have were seen ever in the film. And
exactly.
if that is the case
They
of
never even mentioned
blood,
that.
but if that is the case of blue blood being adopted, who the hell adopted him in the first place? Because there's no mention of Luna and Celestia's parents or sisters in the film, unless
Exactly.
she did mention her mom or dad in it during one episode or two. But
Yeah, or there's
then,
like indirect mention
but
it, like
we
without
probably
saying
would,
it.
but we probably would have found out if they had bought their parents and sisters back into the MLP world. It would have been nice to
Yeah,
see them at least once, and they would have shared
exactly.
some
But even
details
if
on the
so,
family.
yeah. But here's another thing about that. As and when Flurry was born, as both Celestia and Luna stated that no other alicorns has been born in Equestria. And it makes sense because back then that was in the premiere of season 6. And
But if
until
that
like now
wasn't the
in
case, then where did Luna and Celestia come from if they weren't born?
now, well, back then we wouldn't have an answer, but now we do. Because in
Because
G5,
you just said no natural born alicorn was born technically in Equestria, but that wouldn't have been the case if their parents gave birth to them long ago before they disappeared.
well, I have actually an actually official answer for that question. Because both Celestia and Luna were actually born in a different land called Skyros, which mentioned in G5. They were born there because that land is known as Alico land, and they lived there along with Opaline. She was born as an alicorn himself, all of them,
But
and they
wouldn't she
little
have
knew.
been? But she wouldn't she in G? Even though I've never seen G5, I've seen a picture. Wouldn't she technically have been the same height in age as Celestia
Actually,
instead of
yes.
Luna?
Well, she was actually around the same height as Celestia, but Luna wasn't. She was just slight shorter than the less Celestia was. Because that show, because they are actually showing that in, I think it's chapter 5 or chapter 6, when Opaline herself showing the younger Celestia and Luna and herself. And that another thing is that since Luna and Celestia said in season 6, no natural born alicorn had been there. And now, but know for the fact that they are born in Skyros, they came to Equestria shortly after the foundation. And that time, one of the founders, Princess Platinum, and her father was one of the main, wasn't like the main rulers of Equestria, but they ruled part of it until Celestia
In
Elena took
Al
over.
as the Alicorn world, because that's the role Rarity played in a play one time as
Exactly.
Princess Platinum
Well, actually,
was around the Unicorn era.
yeah, she was actually even a unicorn and her father. But another thing about that is that Princess Platinum, uh, um, since the foundation Equestria was that high, and during the time, Star's World and 4 other unicorns was the one who rose the sun and probably the moon as well. because that was later shown in the episode Horseplay. And later they want to discover that Celestia had no problem to rise and lower the sun without any other assistance. That was then when Celestia and Luna were chosen to be the next rulers. And it makes sense because as a statement said that they both said no Alicorn had been born. And they weren't even born in Equestria. Another thing is that another statement that was also made before even G5 or even before season 6 is that they made this actual book called Journal of the Two Ruler Sisters, stating they were born alicorns, and also stating that they weren't living in Equestria. So it makes sense because back in season 6, they both stated no actually had never been born. And now in G5, they're mentioning that they are from Skyros. But here's another good question to be asking here. If Celeste, no, if Twilight would end up getting married, or even engaged, or just having a boyfriend, if they would have a child, would that child be born as an alicorn as well? It's not necessarily saying the first child it had to be an alicorn, because it could have simply that depends also if the father is unicorn or earth pony or even Pegasus. Because if she would have ended up marrying Flash, the child is a possibility either being a Pegasus, unicorn, or alicorn. But it's a good chance that the baby, one of the kids, could have been alicorn. But here's another thought: what if they actually had a son? Could he have been born as an alicorn? It doesn't say that they had to be that, because in the episode where we're having the blood poison, where Macintosh were, well, so madly in love with Shirley, that was shown in a book where that was actually a prince, both was I think it was a prince, a male alicorn. And even though that, even in a French comic of an MLP comic, showing a male alicorn, which is a direct related to to the royal sisters. And his name is Leon, and he's a male alicorn. He's a cousin. But as been most saying that most comics are should not be considered as canon. But even though he's the only known male alicorn, but even he's not canonical character. So even if Twilight would end up marrying someone, if she had a child, it's a strong chance that that child could be an alicorn. But even if there's not saying necessarily that saying that if that the child had to be just an alicorn male, because if the Skyros had a huge population of alicorns, what if, let's say, what if only the females are alicorns and the males can't be alicorn despite their try to be born as one? Only what if that the Skyros population only females are alicorn while the males are unicorns? If that would have been the case, I mean, just look at them at King of the Shining Armor, alicorn, unicorn, makes sense. But we don't even know anything about that. I mean, we don't even know exactly how the society in Skyros even like. In fact, we don't even know if there are any other alicorns alive. So it's it's really impossible to tell right now because even though Opaline at one point got banished from Skyros, Sans
But
in the
if
comics.
she was banished, where on earth did she end up? Not
That's
sure
I
as heck
mean
not the moon.
no, she was. I don't know. First of all, I don't exactly. We don't know for sure how was it,
You know what?
but
I do have a
I
theory
think
for you. Do you think do you think all this time Equestria was Skyros, where Celestial and Lua were born? Because technically it is the only land that is shown throughout the whole series.
well that might be true, but in the case Another
Do
thing
you?
about
But
it's
do you honestly think it could be like the whole section of land, the mountains from where the land where Crystal Empire is, every section of land, even that Dragon Realm area?
yeah. We know that the Crystal Empire as an independent kingdom within Equestria. Same thing for Zephyr Heights. About Crystal Empire, you know that the Crystal Heart. In some of the comics, it turned out that crystal is actually an actual dragon heart. But I don't even know if that's true or not. But it's just as the Opal. My belief is that she was banished because, as Spike mentioned in the story, when he explained to Sip, Sunny, and Hitch, that she believed that alicorns are superior and that she will all the match for herself. And I really believe that she tried to steal the magic from the Skyros. But I don't know if Skyros is like Cloud still like a cloud city or kingdom in the sky, or if there's an actual on the ground. But I do believe more like ground, though.
What if it
But
was both? A kingdom in
they
the
could be
sky
friends.
made of clouds.
True, but here's another thing: we don't even know if Opaline and um if there are any other Alicorns left in Skyros. We don't even
Um,
know that, but it's
but
possible.
the reason for me bringing up Celestia and Lewis' parents, as well as their two sisters, Sterling and Gold Lily, is because that's why. Is because we want. I wanted them to be more mentionable, which is why I wanted you to add them coming home in the Celestia and Malachite story for this upcoming April. That's why I was mentioning them in the
Yeah,
ideas.
I mean, I can understand that. I mean, considering how many how things are as it developed so far. Um, as Sam said, I think Sunny is a bit bullied. That's just me. Well, at least we know for a fact that Opaline herself stated to Misty that she is immortal.
Mm.
That means that also would mean that Celestia and Luna are also immortal. But I really don't know if Cadence and Twilight are immortal because they return as an alicorn. And at the same time, as one of the people that was working for G4 program show during production made a statement on Twitter after she had left, stated that Twilight won't outlive her friends. And another thing is, if when the opponent is transformed into an alicorn, a normal opponent lives for about maybe let's say 100 years. We don't even know for sure. And then an alicorn that's been turned into an alicorn, we don't even know if how long they can live. But and I don't know if the statement of Opaline saying that she is immortal. Maybe she lied about it. Maybe that she can live for. I mean, what if that an alicorn has just a really extremely long lifespan? Maybe they live for 2,000 years or more. We cannot say for certain about that. But if they're immortal, it's possible.
Mm. But yeah, that's mainly the one reason I wanted you to have them, come home early. Them mean Twilight, their friends, and all that stuff. And with you seeing Celestia should have been next with Queen, that's why I had the idea when she and Malachi got married. Her mother passed the torch to her becoming queen, as well as maybe right next to also making Sterling and Gold Lily queen because they're also sisters and technically should also be ranked as the queen before Luna and Celestia did.
Yeah,
Because and also when they get married, I had the thought, the idea where King Supernova, that's what I'm calling. even though I think his
Hmm.
name's King Millennium. He passed his position of king to Malachite. And
Yeah.
Phoenix Cascades was to be a little princess ruler right up on the throne with Celestia right in the future when she got a bit older, along with Majestic Magic being a prince, also ruling up there with the four with their with his parents. And
Yeah, that
I
can make
I don't
sense.
I didn't like the idea of where they wanted Celestia and Lewis to retire. I mean, I would have wanted them to at least get married in that film. Getting married, I
True.
think, would have been an important factor and finale to all the characters
Yeah.
in the series.
And about them. And even about the Celestial Luna, as the San said in comments, Opaline certainly didn't become a princess. I have to say right now, my belief is that neither Celestia or Luna were princesses when they were still living in Skyros. I believe they were more like just common citizens. They weren't even part of any royal family at all. I believe that they weren't even part of a royal family, yet they became princes after they were chosen as the rulers of Equestria, not before them. And that the reason is why I don't believe that Opaline is called princess is, well, she was just simply evil. She was selfishness. And even if though, but I have to say, both Celestia and Luna, they were a little bit, kind of a little bit jerks when they were young. Opaline tried to be their friend, but they just simply ignored because they were more superior because, or more better for them, more have better power because they can control the moon and sun. And herself can be controlled the fire because she's a fire alicorn. But in the end, I don't maybe and simply if Opaline would have been a princess, question is what title of what? We know that Luna is of the moon, Celestia of the sun, Cadence of love, and Twilight of friendship. And what about Opaline? That's another thing we don't even know. And but first of all, the only the only way for her to be as a princess, maybe if I don't I don't think she even saw herself as the princess. Maybe that she could have been given a title, but at the same time, she also had even if she had a title of princess, it's also a possibility that she just simply removed, stopped calling her, maybe stopped using the title of princess. But it's a bit difficult to tell because we don't know much about their childhood was like. We only know that Celestia and Luna ignored because they thought they were much better than her and Opaline. But I mean, to be fair, they were young, and many young kids are thinking sometimes they're much better than others, which is not that uncommon. So they probably felt like that. But Opaline didn't become a princess. But it's possible that she could have if she was more friendly. But and now that Sunny is a princess. Well, now that she's an unicorn, what is her princess title? Princess of Future? Who knows?
Mm. Well, she was Princess of the Galaxy.
Hmm.
That would also make sense.
True.
And also you see Celestia. I'll, I I technically don't believe Oberlin would have known Celestia and Luna because of the main reason you said that they could have bullied her back then. Given how I've seen them act in the show, true they might lose their tempers, but that's because they were probably yelling at each other, like what you saw with Starlight's friendship mission on them, a royal
Yeah,
problem. But
true.
given how
And
they,
the sim.
but my point is, given how they act throughout the rest of the series, they don't seem like the type of opponents that would go off and do something that stupid.
I mean, when you're just a young kid, you do all kinds of stupid things. So how and treat others a difference. Sometimes if you have, but it could also be like say certain types of people that if you're born with a little bit higher status, like say if you're part of an upper class family, if you're so you're say your family is quite rich and that and look down on others. Like say, for example, if I was part of a rich family, and since your family is a working class, I will look my more superior than you are. I like how I can buy anything I can do. I have a chef that can make me all kinds of food, and you're like, your mom probably works enough for them, earns enough money to just pay food for you and your uncle and pay the bills, and you probably won't have even if you want to if I can go to any rich restaurants I wanted to, and you can probably just stand outside. You have dreams you want to go to that place, for example. But as a kid, just do all kinds of stupid things, saying stupid things, treat others like garbage. This is possible for that. And then even I did that when I was younger. But as
but
Celestia and
still,
Luna, as they grew older, they realized how they couldn't just act like that. Because here's the thing: if they continue to act like that even as adults, how would the general public react to that? Not in a good positive. They probably wouldn't even like them. They probably could demand they act up, or in a worst case, they had to find someone else as their rulers because they want to have a ruler that is such rude or very incompetent, or some people call it.
which
And
brings
I
me back to
understand that.
what which brings me back to what I was saying too, because they're loved. They're both loved by the public. So that then again, what I'm saying, they would not be a type of point that would do something that dumb and stupid. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been. Because
Exactly.
if they did, they wouldn't have been loved by every pony. But they were both loved. Even Luna, when she came back and was turned back into Luna from Night Moon because of Twilight and her friends, and
Well,
she
here's the thing though, about that. Luna was originally supposed to have a much bigger role in the season one, but the staff behind didn't want to have that because since she used to be in Laura Faust's original plan was that to have more roles for Luna in the show. But the other people behind the program, the show itself was, well, they didn't like the idea because they thought that kids were thinking that they wouldn't even like her because she used to be a big villain. But it did changed when season two, when she came to during Night, or eventually how she started helping the CMC, and eventually how she indirectly told Starlight what was happening when she was still in her dream world. And it makes sense that. And seeing how, even back in the first movie from the 2017, how Celestia told Luna go to find the hippogriffs, but she was turned to stone before that could happen. So, in the many different ways of seeing how her character, and even though that okay, look at how she looked when she was free from the Nightmare Moon's possession, and how much later on. It's because she another reason is why that she was weak, not because that she like mentally weak, but her she was in a weak state. Maybe not like physical, not mentally, but physically, because if you look at her body's color, they're like lighting blue, when much later on they're more like darker, more like bit much darker in color. So it's more like the thing that she was more just having freed herself, liberated from the Night Moon's control, and that made her in a little bit weak state at the moment, and took her time to regain the strength again. And that might, even though I think it's possible that her might have been that darker blue in from before she became the Night Moon, but she turned that, and she became like that light blue after she was freed from Night Moon's possession, because that
okay.
took a lot of her energy.
Now, given what you just said with her them know about the hippogriffs, they probably knew the whole land. So if they knew Equestria like the back of their hooves, and they were born Skyrose, they were then that technically would answer the question that maybe Equestria was once known as Skyrose at one point in time. And with them saying the Hippogriffs could help out with what Storm King was doing in invading their section of the world, that would make me wonder to ask if Hippogriff magic is, in a way, sort of a little bit more powerful than Alicorn magic, Celestial Lua and Kansas magic combined.
Who knows? But it's
I
just
mean,
that another. Yeah,
that's another theory. If because she knew Hippogriffs could help out, so that makes me wonder if their magic is in a way powerful like their magic.
I mean, it's also another thing is that when the main magic disappeared, it's also possible that the changelings and the hypocrites lost their magic, that their pearl lost its effect. And it is possible they could have been that all the world's magic were all connected. And Skyros, well, it's actually been confirmed to be its own separate part. It's not even part of Equestria. But it's a good theory, though. I mean, and since I mean, considering it is for I first believed that when the main magic was when it was gone, I first believed that the Discord's magic, the chaos magic, would be unaffected. But it turned out his magic also vanished for the same exact moment. So if his magic is connected to the main magic of the Equestrians, so there must be the other magic as well. It's possible for that. It makes more sense.
Mm.
Well, I should probably end the stream here soon. Nearly 3.5 hours.
Mm. I mean, still, that is at least one good theory to think about, because they Queen Nova had that pearl, which I think probably helps their magic a little bit. That's what got me to theory on hippogriff magic and alchemy magic sort of being at the same level as each other's type of magic.
It's possible. Well, I'll probably end here.
Mm.
Well,
Well,
everyone has been fun.
hmm, yeah, it has.
So, yeah. So, is there just for me? It's officially over. Since now it is actually Monday. Well, it's been fun and a lot of deep conversation about things of MLP topics. Always interesting. Well, everyone, this is Switch Tablo signing off. Bye.
See ya.